Hello, AP Scholars. We're going to be going over the questions for the free response. I don't know how to pronounce these things. Free response practice number 3. Free response question practice number 3. Oh, that's a FRQ practice 3 is what I'm trying to say. This one is a lot of reading to do, and I think the questions themselves, like once you figured out what you're supposed to do, were straightforward, but getting to that point was the hardest thing because there's so much reading. Do you notice that? I find that the art of doing well on this exam often has to do with just sort of understanding what is going on in the question. And once you get there, the questions themselves aren't too bad, but it's a long process. So all this practice is really important. So we're going to start with question A. It's all about this music download stuff. There is a class that we're writing everything in. It's called Music Downloads, and we're going to be writing the get download info method for part A. And notice that we're in this environment, this class, where there's a download list, which is an array list of download info objects, and they give us a bit of info on the download info object structure. Somewhere around here. Here's some information about how you can create a download info object, how you can get its title, and how you can increase the number of times it's been downloaded. So all that stuff hopefully got you started on this question, which is basically gonna take a string that is representing the title of a song, presumably that might be in the download list, and you're going to search the list to see if a download object with that title exists. And if it does, you return the object. Otherwise, you return null. So that's the story behind that question. So here's the answer to the question. I am returning a download info object, so that needs to be the return type. It takes a string as a parameter. So the thing with this question is that the string and the download info objects are not directly compatible. You have to use some, finesse to do that, which is basically going to be the get title method that download info objects have. I'm using a for each loop for this one. You don't need to do anything with indexes for this question. You're not removing anything from a list, so I'm just going to go from the beginning to the end of the list and be looking for something. So this seems like a good time to use a for each loop. So basically, I'm going to go through the download list, and I'm going to first start. It'll just automatically start at the beginning, and DL will represent at the beginning of the loop the first item in the list, and then the second time through it'll be the second item in the list, and so on. So as I go through, I'm just going to check the title of the download object that I am getting. I'm not sure why they colored it differently here, and I'm going to check to see if it equals the title. It's really important that you have something like this. If you're using a regular for loop, you need to get the object first before you can check if it's equal. And you have to get the object and use get title. So get title is essential for this question. If you don't use it, then you're getting marks off for sure. If it does equal the title, well then I'm going to return the object because that's what you're supposed to do. And if you get to the end, if you get to the end of the loop and you haven't returned yet, well, I guess you didn't find it, so you return null. So that's the answer to this question. I think that's about as simple as it gets. If you use the for loop, a regular for loop, totally fine. No harm in doing that. This is just a little easier in terms of how much code you have to write, and it's a useful thing to do. But nothing wrong with doing a while loop even. Your choice. Okay, so that's part A. For part B, it asks you to basically so much to read, right? Update downloads is a method that's going to be in the what's it called? In this class, the music downloads class. Again, the download list is an instance variable in this class, and it's going to be side by side with the last method we wrote. We just wrote get download info. So it's going to be side by side with our new one, update downloads. So you can use the thing you just wrote, the get download info method, in the solution for this question, which will make it a lot easier. So basically it takes a list of titles and you need to update the list. So if the song that has that title in this list here is already in your download list, then you need to increase the number of times it's been downloaded. And if it's not in there, then you need to add it to the list. So make a new download, whatever it's called, info object, and then add it to your list. So here's the story. So here's my answer to question 1b. Update downloads. Again, it takes the array list of titles, and I'm going to use another for each loop, because again, you just want to go through this entire list of titles. You don't care about the index. You're not removing. You're not adding anything to it. You're just going from beginning to end. So that's a good time for a for each loop. Each time title will be each time to the loop title will be a different string in that list. It'll start with the first one and end with the last one. So I'm just basically going to be pulling out the title one at a time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use get download info, the method we wrote for question 1a. It'll either return the object if it's in the list or return null. So that's cool. So I'll make this download info variable. I'll call it DL. I'm not sure why I called it DL now that I think of it. Maybe DI would have been better. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And then I do an if statement. So if it was null, then I have to add it to the list. And if it wasn't null, then I guess that object represents the download info object with that title. So I'll just increment the times it's been downloaded. So it's really important to notice for the answer here that you can't just add title. I think I'm going to, and I forgot a paren here. I think it's really important to notice that you can't just say add title. This is not a list of strings, so you actually have to create the download info object, and you'd have to take a look at the constructor to see how to do that. And it turns out the constructor just takes a string parameter, so that works out really nicely. If you didn't use get download info, you probably have some kind of nested loop structure going on here, and you can get full marks. It's not that you will get 0 or even lose marks necessarily, but look how much simpler this is. If you didn't use get download info, it would be probably twice as long as this solution. So it always pays to notice that you can use anything that is available to you in a class, unless the question specifically says you can't for whatever reason. Just maybe it's part of the question, but in this case you totally can use it, which makes life a lot easier. Alright folks, that's the answer to question 1, and I'll have a video for question 2 as well. So check that out. Thanks everybody.